It is a quiet spring night. Inside a brightly lit, sterile control room, men in white coats and thick glasses are casually drinking coffee. They review clipboards. They chat about the upcoming weekend. To the outside world, the machine they are operating is a marvel of modern engineering humming with the quiet power of a sleeping giant. Everything is perfectly routine. Everything is under control. But beneath their feet, a terrifying physical reaction is already beginning to spiral. They think they are taming the beast. They have no idea it is about to wake up. The date is April 25th, crossing into the early hours of April 26th, 1986. We are at the Chernobyl nuclear power complex, located in a dense woodland region of Ukraine, just over 100 kilometers north of Kiev. The facility is the pride of the Soviet Union. It houses 4 massive RBMK-1000 reactors, behemoths of graphite and uranium designed to power the modern age. Less than 3 kilometers away lies Pripyat. It is a pristine, modern city built specifically for the plant's workers and their families. Nearly 50,000 men, women, and children are asleep in their beds. Inside reactor number 4, things feel completely normal. The reactor is scheduled for a routine shutdown. But before they power it down completely, the engineering team is ordered to conduct a safety test. The goal is simple, and seemingly responsible, to see how long the massive turbines would continue to spin and supply power to the water cooling pumps if the main electrical grid suddenly failed. It is an exercise designed to increase safety, but the reality of what is about to happen will prove to be the exact opposite. The human error at the heart of this disaster does not belong to just one malicious villain. It belongs to a rigid system, and a team of operators pushing forward under intense pressure to complete their assigned task. To simulate a blackout, the operators make a fateful decision. They deliberately begin disabling the reactor's automatic shutdown mechanisms. They turn off the emergency core cooling system. Why? Because the test requires the reactor to be pushed to its limits. And the automated safety nets keep trying to interfere. To the shift supervisor and his engineers, this seems perfectly reasonable. They have run similar tests before. They trust their Soviet engineering implicitly. But they are operating under a fatal assumption. They are entirely unaware that the RBMK reactor harbors a deeply guarded design flaw, a positive void coefficient. In simple terms, in this specific type of reactor, water acts as both a coolant and a brake on the nuclear reaction. If that water boils into steam bubbles or voids, it no longer absorbs neutrons. The reaction doesn't slow down, it speeds up. The dominoes begin to fall. The safety test demands that the reactor be held at a specific low power level, but as the crew maneuvers the reactor late into the night, the power drops far too low. It plunges into what nuclear physicists call a poisoned state, choking on a sudden buildup of xenon gas. Standard operating protocol dictates that they should abort the test immediately and shut the reactor down completely. But they don't. Driven by the pressure to complete the test and avoid delays, the operators are determined to force the power back up. To do this, they begin manually extracting the control rods, the literal brakes of the nuclear engine. Out of 211 control rods, almost all of them are pulled entirely out of the core. Alarms begin to blink on the control panels. Warning dials flash red. The computer systems literally print out warnings stating that the reactor is dangerously lacking in its operating reactivity margin. The signs are all there, but they are ignored, they are misunderstood, they are overridden. The operators believe they are the masters of the machine. They manually block the signals that would trigger an automatic shutdown. They are now driving a massive, unstable nuclear engine at low power, completely devoid of brakes, with the emergency cooling systems intentionally turned off. It is 1:23 a.m. The test officially begins. The flow of cooling water slows down. Inside the core, the water begins to boil. Steam forms rapidly. The positive void coefficient takes over. The nuclear reaction accelerates. Power surges uncontrollably. The operators finally realize their catastrophic mistake. Panic sets in. Someone slams the AZ5 button, the ultimate, final emergency shutdown. The remaining control rods begin to descend back into the core. But it is too late. The tips of these control rods are made of graphite. For a fraction of a second as they enter the core, they do not stop the reaction. They accelerate it. A massive power spike tears through the core. The uranium fuel shatters. Water flashes instantly to steam. The pressure spikes violently. The 1,000-ton steel and concrete roof of the reactor lifts off like a toy. Control rods jam. Pipes burst open. The core is completely exposed to the night air. A colossal steam explosion rocks the Earth. 2 to 3 seconds later, A second, even more violent explosion rips through the night sky, throwing radioactive graphite and incandescent fuel high into the atmosphere. Reactor number 4 is gone. The point of no return has been crossed. And the consequences will reshape the world. The human impact is immediate. And it is devastating. Local firefighters rush to the scene. They have no idea that the strange, glowing rocks they are kicking out of their way are highly radioactive pieces of the reactor core. They taste metal in the air. Within hours, the brave men who fought the blaze on the roof of the turbine building begin to collapse. Their skin burns. They suffer severe nausea. 2 workers die in the immediate blasts. 28 more, including 6 firemen, will die agonizing deaths in the coming weeks from acute radiation syndrome. Their bodies receive radiation doses up to 20,000 milligrays, more than double the universally fatal limit. For a day and a half, the Soviet government says nothing. The 49,000 residents of Pripyat go about their weekend. Children play in parks, breathing in radioactive dust. Finally, on the afternoon of April 27th, fleets of buses arrive. The city is evacuated. Residents are told they will return in 3 days. They will never return. Then comes the environmental catastrophe. The exposed, burning core spews roughly 14 exabecquerels of radioactivity into the atmosphere. It is the largest uncontrolled radioactive release in the history of civilian operations. The wind carries a silent, invisible poison isotopes of iodine and cesium across Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, and eventually over Scandinavia and Western Europe. Over 5 million people find themselves living in contaminated areas. An exclusion zone is carved into the earth, a 4.300 square kilometers scar where humanity is no longer welcome. Hundreds of thousands of emergency workers, known as liquidators, are drafted from across the Soviet Union. They shovel radioactive debris by hand. They drop sand, lead, and boron from helicopters directly over the gaping, burning more of the reactor. They sacrifice their health, and in some cases their lives, to build a concrete sarcophagus over the smoldering ruins to protect the rest of the world. Years later, the dust settled, but the truth could not be buried. Official investigations, including a landmark 1991 report, looked past the operators in the control room and pointed to a massive systemic failure. It was true that the crew placed the reactor in a dangerously unstable condition. But they had not violated vital operating policies because those policies had never been clearly articulated to them. The operating organization had kept the specific, dangerous quirks of the RBMK reactor hidden. They lacked a fundamental culture of safety. The disaster shattered the illusion of Soviet technological supremacy. In fact, former President Mikhail Gorbachev later stated that the Chernobyl accident was a more important factor in the fall of the Soviet Union than his own political reforms. The lesson was written in blood, and in radioactive ash, when transparency is sacrificed for national pride. When safety is bypassed for the sake of efficiency, and when the people operating the machines are kept in the dark, nature will exact a terrifying toll. The tragedy of reactor number 4 was not an act of God. It was a chain of human arrogance, institutional silence, and deeply flawed engineering, and this disaster could have been avoided. Thank you so much for liking the video, subscribing, what people think, and watching this video to the end.